Okay, guys, I'm here in Parliament Square. Forgive me for the setup, but I've chosen this angle to just stay safe and to stay out of people's way. I hope that it's live streaming properly. I'm going to turn this around a bit because we go. I think I'm okay. I'm not really in the way. I've come here to central London to talk about crime, and in particular, the crime that is affecting House of Parliament and staff, also MPs, those that visit, guests that make it to Parliament for meetings. They also visit their MP because they live in the constituency. Security is one of those issues that a very front-facing public building has to confront. It has to deal with every single day as part of its role, as part of its job, but also alongside those who work in security, national security, and also security in other parts of the country, because it has to involve itself in that type of infrastructure in order for it to work. So I've come here to talk through some of the issues regarding that. I had been in Reading the other day, and I brought up somebody who's been particularly harassing of Parliament itself, people inside who work inside the building on site. He wasn't following people to their homes, he was harassing people inside the buildings. So it's worth starting with where I'm stood right now. This is being used at the moment by, I would say, about 100, 200 people to enjoy what is a sunny day. On some days, however, there are large protests here. It is sometimes not accessible to you or I if we're just looking to walk around, sit and have a drink of water or visit somewhere because of that large number of people. I don't know particularly if protests in recent years have affected parliamentary security, but people tell me that it always has some type of effect, but it isn't clear protest to protest if it's having a more serious or sinister effect on its security. It depends on the protest itself, and the number of protests that have been held here means that there is probably a large body of work attached to it. And I haven't got it to consult to read out which protest was a problem and which protest wasn't. But it can depend on the actual day. It can depend on a few days leading up to it. If people are causing trouble, some protest organizers choose to agitate staff that work in buildings in the vicinity before the day of protest. So I don't know if protest in recent times has had a material effect on the security of Parliament, but it's possible. But somebody or some people would know that, but I haven't got access to that information here. It's not to hand. Okay, I can see the comments now if they come up. So the gentleman, the suspect that I talked through the other day on Conservative News site, this channel, CNS-TV, that guy, I had found, others had found loitering in Westminster. A lot of us work in and around London. We may have come across and we may not have. I actually found further bits of information that proved he had gone inside the building using some sort of privileged access he shouldn't have, but he used it often. And it was a case of whether he was able to meet somebody and who it was that he encountered inside the building on the grounds. This is somebody who has other ways also of trying to conceal what he's doing. So it is opportunistic, but it's also methodical in the way that he approaches it. But it's a big concern. People need to be safe if they're handling our process of making laws. They need to be safe. if they've also been entrusted with people's stories, but also vital national data. You can imagine that people that are dealing with the economy, having to make announcements about national security, having also to talk about other countries in the Commons chamber, need to be kept safe. They need to be safe from any type of influence, and sometimes harassment counts as a type of influence. So here in London, there are many important buildings. There are many important people that both live and work in the city. This city needs to be kept safe for the sake of the country. It is our most important city. It's the most populous city, but it also has the most important activity out of any place, any part of the United Kingdom. And a lot of the work that people do outside of London is to contribute to the work that is done inside of London. But it's also being done by staff who work at embassies that represent other states, of course, overseas states, who work at companies that are based overseas but have offices here. Some of that work is feeding into there too. So it's very important to keep people away from sensitive meetings. It's important to make sure that people's activity in general is possible, but it's also important to make sure that any type of threat that exists doesn't come against those whose business is not to consider whether they're safe or to know how to keep themselves safe. Other people do that work for them and around them. So that individual gaining access on a number of occasions to Parliament brings out this subject. It brings out the reason why. It also brings out the necessity. He hasn't been involved in the killings of some MPs, of two MPs. He wasn't involved in that. He didn't manage to gain, as it was termed to me, strategic advantage in order to actually do physical harm. It's not as straightforward as we might imagine to cause harm to somebody, but he was able to approach people and to harass their person and sometimes be verbally abusive. That creates stress. It also creates anxiety in and around rooms, meeting rooms where there shouldn't be that type of feeling, that type of apprehension. It hasn't affected the lawmaking process, but here is somebody that proves that people could. You can see out here it's very busy. It's quite a dynamic uh, space, if you like, a dynamic area, public area where people are free to come and go and to hang around, to enjoy the sun and enjoy time with each other. It's a contrast to what goes on inside Parliament. People can also be in a good mood, they can also be cheerful, but what they're working on is the type of information that we get eventually in a news report, in a broadcast. It's a type of controversy that eventually comes up because people disagree. It's a type of data that eventually emerges because of what they decided there. So that is an important place behind me, and that is a target because people work in that building. It's a workplace. MPs have offices. Some MPs, I think, it's most MPs have some type of office or workspace in Parliament. Parliamentary researchers and staff also situate themselves inside the building. It's not like a museum. It is a seat of government, and it is working every day like that. Every working day, it is acting as a seat of government. And so it is vital that people are safe because, frankly, there is a threat against their life if work isn't being done around them. Now, I've also covered some of the particular threats that some particular MPs have faced. I won't go into who they were, um, but being an MP sends you out into the public domain, into the public realm, meeting people who front companies, who are the face of local authorities, who are also important local figures. And any one of those encounters could highlight you to somebody who wants to agitate. Maybe they have a problem with royalty. Maybe they've got an issue with democracy. Maybe they pick faults with some characteristic or tradition or way of life that people have got here. It could be somebody who's racist. It could be somebody who isn't, but they don't like democracy. At first, it can come across as random to law enforcement who the person is, um, but then it settles into the domain of normality because they work out what they're actually trying to do. It could involve weaponry, it could involve causing a scene, of setting up a stunt, it could involve just being abusive, embarrassing, humiliating towards somebody, and that can have a more human impact on depending on who it is. So the fact that somebody has been trying to gain access regularly, or had been, to Parliament, had been using events to try to get behind security, had been using various excuses and also people to enable his access to the buildings that make up what Parliament is, um, brings out some questions about who works there, about who's looking over the safety of the members of the Commons, also peers, not forgetting those who sit in the House of Lords. It brings out some of the issues that people will go over in any workplace, over how they're operating in their role. Are they using all the tools that they've got available to the fullest extent? Are they using human resources, other people, to build up a sufficient picture for themselves? These are some of the HR questions that you may not think should come up, but a fact of the matter brings it up and it makes it important. London has also been through some straits in recent years because of threats inherent to its life here, to its place in the world. Also, it is a very global facing city. A lot of people know about London, and a lot of those people know about it because they have to come in and fly out due to work and other commitments. Family live in London, they've got to visit family. There's an office here they've got to visit to meet staff. That type of arrangement, and it means that London has its own unique issues too. And sometimes an individual, a lone actor, may try to use their personal intel about those issues to cause trouble. It's not just an issue of Parliament itself, it's not a rebuke, it's not a criticism only of parliamentary security. It's also a question for the city at large about whether people are really being watched, about whether they're using their full legal powers to follow and track individuals, and about whether they're actually willing to follow through on reports that the public also give about threats that they've seen. The technology, the software, some of the tools, also the research tools that people have to use in security, can also be a hindrance at times. If somebody is particularly quick on their feet, they may have to turn to more rudimentary ways of finding out what's going on, but that in itself is less sophisticated than what they can usually do. This guy, this gentleman, also is said to have some mental health difficulties or impairments. It suggests also what he did, or what he actually managed to achieve, is low level. MPs did not come up against a threat that was actually fatal. They weren't manipulated in the sense financially, emotionally, relationally, out of things that they own and hold for themselves. So it's a low level threat, but it's one that was seeking to make an impact. It's to the credit of those that work on it that more aggressive, if you like, violent actors haven't managed to gain that type of control, that type of operational advantage. But there's no telling what some people may do if they have a bad day, for instance, if they find a further loophole that they can use, if they find a further gap in the armor that they want to leverage. It may not be the Chancellor, it may not be a Lord, but it could be a member of staff that you know. The attacks on two MPs, by the description that is publicly available, seem random. They seem opportunistic. That doesn't just mean by chance, however. Sometimes that has to be strategized as well. But opportunistic means that it doesn't have really a further message or meaning to it inherent within the attack. Somebody took the opportunity or one of the chances they were looking for, but they had planned for. It's not easy to approach an MP anyway. But that goes to prove that things have to be covered everywhere, that every issue that security managers have to look at needs to be looked at regularly. Nothing can be left out. This is the most important government building that we've got. This is the one that sits on top of any other type of government building, and therefore it's vital to how it all works. Legitimacy sometimes only works between people, and if people have got a problem here, then it can spread throughout the so-called system or network. So this is the reality that people face. Maybe you know somebody who studied security at university. Maybe you know somebody who's got a duty at work that involves trying to secure premises. They will be able to say some of the challenges that Parliament faces in terms of making sure everybody is safe and also making sure it remains a public building, that it remains accessible to anyone who should be inside it. It's not just about missiles, it's not just about a plane, and it's not just about explosives. If somebody has a sincere enough motive in terms of criminal motive in their criminalized thinking, they will be looking for ways to get to the individual, whether we regard them as important or not. Depending on who it is, it could be critical to the trust that we have in Parliament, or it could just bring more questions about whether our democracy is something that we can keep control over, whether it's something that is actually free. If people are being harassed and harmed, it may mean that democracy itself is struggling. So these are some of the questions that will branch off of any security risk. Are we still free? Would a foreign leader be able to leverage some of those challenges? Would a foreign power even attempt to influence what remains of the system because there is a weakness? So there's a lot of scrutiny of security staff that are tasked with the difficult job of keeping Parliament there or here and keeping anybody who happens to be inside it safe. There's a lot of scrutiny over some of the tactics they may use. Are they effective enough? Maybe some of their staff. Are they efficient enough? And also maybe some of their policies. Do they need to be more forceful? Do they need to confront people more often? This is one of the issues that I've looked into often, and it takes a while to try to find out facts about people and what they're trying to do here. There are lots of different ways it could be looked at in London. For example, Westminster Abbey is just to my left. The Supreme Court is just ahead of me. The culture of Department of Culture, Media and Sport is to my right. Those are all targets as well. Anybody that works in or for those buildings or has some connection to them maybe could be a target because of it. We just don't know. One of them is a religious building, another legal, another departmental in the government. That makes all of them targets for somebody. We can't anticipate who. Criminality exists around us, but sometimes we don't know it's there. Sometimes plots are subversive. We're not aware of it until it reaches a particular stage, because there are also techniques involved in keeping it quiet, in keeping it out of reach, in keeping it hidden in full view. So this is one of the major issues that continues to be important here. It's not so much an issue of power. It's not really a question of law. It's a matter that goes into the heart of how people are working, about whether people are really focused, about whether people are working together.